Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh,
fine.
Oh, the tree.
Yeah, we've got the tree. Not to be confused, this is not our Christmas episode.
No.
It's just, yeah,
It's just the season. It's the morning. Recording in the morning. It's a beautiful, nice, crisp
We're
winter's day
beautifully
outside.
backlit. It's like you're in heaven.
For breakfast.
Mint. Ooh.
Okay, so I'm going to make you some eggs. Nice little breakfast mash. It's with mashed avocado, peas, mint, feta, honey, put over some rye bread. It'll come together on the plate. You look very confused.
No, that sounds amazing. I'm really in.
Cool. So I'd like the toasty maker, please. So I can. So I might just need to look up how to use, do this whole thing.
I think you've peaked. This looks like like the Waitrose magazine.
Yeah.
The cover.
Oh,
like
thank you.
Drippy yolk, chili flakes.
Yeah. Does it have peas? That makes it sound like I'm never going to get better.
Yeah, I've never thought of peas for breakfast, but actually that looks really good, and what you did with it sounds amazing. But
So-
give us an intro to what.
All right,
you made.
ladies and gentlemen,
for the listeners out there.
for the listeners and all you watchers out there.
This is also an AM edition, by the way.
This is an AM edition. So this is a morning edition. It was my turn to provide the food. So I thought, of course, we've got to have some breakfasty, brunchy vibes. Now, we had breakfast before. We had pastries and stuff. But today, I think we should have more of a brunch thing. So what I've got for us here is it's vegetarian. It's rye bread, lightly toasted with a bit of butter. Then what I've got is a mash of peas, avocado, feta, honey, sea salt, chili flakes, black pepper, and lemon juice, all mashed together. And then on top, a very softly, gently boiled egg. A Burford Brown, of course, for its wonderful yolk.
You nailed the soft middle because you worried.
Thank
We
you.
started peeling it. George was
I
like,
did.
"Oh, it's too soft," and we were like, "No, let's go for it." Sliced it open. It was
Yeah.
like the nectar of the gods.
Oh,
in there.
thank you.
Yeah,
And-
no, it looks. I'm really happy.
It's also, full disclosure, it's the first time I've prepped this, ever.
Yeah.
So I've given it a little taste in there. James hasn't had any yet. But I think also if you're a meat eater, you could jazz it up with you could chuck in some chorizo there.
Yep.
Just a light bit.
Just like serve it with
Or even-
crispy American bacon on the
Or
side.
some lightly chopped cherry tomatoes as well.
Yeah, cherry tomatoes.
This is a
would
very
be
adaptable
nice.
dish. I know,
Yeah.
peas. Who'd have thought peas? But the mixture, I think, of the peas and the mint and the avocado and the feta together is...
Before we jump in, peas get a really bad rap, and I'd
from
like
me.
to stand up to peas.
Yeah,
Not for me. Like, I'm pro pea. I'm pea positive.
Who's slagging off peas?
People, I think the humble garden pea has got a bad rap for being the sort of boiled veg on the side that you got at kids with like fish fingers and chips. And it's like plain. There's nothing interesting about them. They're impossible to get up with the fork. But if you've ever done like some properly seasoned, like oily minty peas with lemon juice, olive oil, black pepper, like they are such a great addition. Nando's do great peas. The macho peas at Nando's
First
are
of
fantastic.
all, if you're struggling to eat peas with a fork, use a spoon.
Yeah.
Secondly,
We're all grown-ups
I
now.
like peas as like they do have flavour. They kind of sweet, and I usually steam my vegetables. You see, it gives us, I think
always
it's
a good shout.
greater flavour, gives
I
more
think so.
nutrients actually.
You lose it. You don't lose it in the water.
Exactly, and if you chuck in peas with something like, to contrast it, like broccoli or cabbage, it kind of meets in the middle. You've got this like strong flavour of those.
It's a binder.
vegetables. Yeah,
It brings the plate together.
But without further ado, James, please, let's
I'm
have
gonna go
some.
for it.
You've got an iced coffee. I've got some tea. Let's see what you think.
The mint straight
Yeah.
away. It's the morning. I'm alive. I'm up. Hello.
Yeah. That's
nice
what I
to
think.
see you.
I thought I need James to be awake for this show. No more sleepwalking through these shows, James.
Just want to reiterate, the peas are working so well.
Yeah.
I've never had that before, but that is really, really good. I'm going to 100% do that in the future. Avocado with mushed peas through it. Obviously,
Yeah.
like seasoned.
I
You've got
actually
feta in
think it's-
there.
I think-
really good.
I think it's the fine. Sorry for cross-talking over you just there.
No, it's fine.
I think the peas. I think all of the ingredients work in unison. The sweetness of the peas and the honey brings out the. It's balanced by the sourness of the lemon juice, and of course you have that kind of avocado sort of as the kind of the base in the middle, and the feta, of course, has its own sort of tang. I find it very hard to find know where to find a good fish and chips in parts of London. It's all been kind of like glazed over with the Deliveroo Just Eat kind of.
I think the culture of the fish and chip shop has slightly become sidelined in the London food scene. I still think, your seaside towns, your Brightons, your Bournemouths are defined, but not defined, but they are it's part of the fun is you go there and you have a fish and chips. There are some excellent fish and chip shops. I've been to a few in London. But I don't think it's now like what I think people are after when they come to the food scene in London.
It's not fusiony enough.
I think a while ago it was part of the experience of London. Now I think it's. I think the London food scene is incredible. I think it's so much better. I think every 5 years it dramatically improves and becomes better and better and better. Because it has a bad reputation, especially amongst Americans. Like, oh, English food is so bad. It's like, yeah, they think, oh, do you eat boiled cabbage and like horrible pub food there? I'm like, no, it's a metropolitan, cosmopolitan city with like decades of immigration. Of course, the food is incredible. Like any like big city with loads of people in it. It's
pot kettle black. Excuse me. Do you not eat like greasy, like deep
like,
fried meat for breakfast all the time?
Yeah, so they think like, oh, like you have beans for breakfast. You know what I always see on Twitter is pictures of like British Airways like airport lounges, and they see the tray of baked beans, and that for Americans is like the most disgusting thing, which I understand, because if you don't have any connection to baked beans, you'd find that really gross. But for us, beans for breakfast is like the most normal, beans on toast, delicious beans on toast, beans with like eggs. It's so normal, but they like see that as like the pinnacle of English food. And I've heard on podcasts, Americans like, God, I'm going to London, but like, I don't know what the food's going to be like. And then they come back, like, food was amazing. I was in markets, I had like Portuguese and Indian. Like, I know, but we do get a bad rap in the UK for having bad food.
But I feel like if you want to go for just fish and chips, you either find a good chippy, or it's usually like a Chinese takeaway that happens to do fish and chips.
Right, yeah.
Or it's like a gastro pub where you're paying like 15 quid for it.
Yeah. That's where I actually think the fish and chip market lies at the moment. It's overpriced pub, or the East End. There's some really good spots near Arsenal, near the Emirates Stadium on Holloway Road.
So on the whole, you liked it. Big thumbs up.
Big thumbs up. Absolutely bang on for breakfast. Beautifully seasoned. Lots of different flavors going on. Tastes something new, which is always fun.
And that rye bread is so fibrous. If that doesn't make you shit your pants, I don't know what will.
When you're mid-flow to review and I'm like,
yeah. That episode was short. So, James, as you know, a couple of months ago, I saw this article about a play that I thought we should both go see. Because the play was called The Shark is Broken, and it was essentially all about Jaws, the film, right? So, I got us tickets. We went and saw it this week. And
sounded great. I was like really up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought, what would be great is before we see this play about Jaws, which, you know, it was made in 1975, 46 years ago, why don't we rewatch the film and then going into this play we'll have a heightened sense of awareness. So we've kind of got like a Jaws double bill.
Yeah.
Film and then the play afterwards. Why don't we talk about the film first?
Yeah. Had you, before rewatching it just now, how many times had you seen it, and when was the last time you'd seen it?
Okay, so I'd seen Jaws quite a few times when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I think I was shown it quite young, actually.
Yeah, same. I was shown it really young.
Really young, and I really enjoyed it. But when I went to watch it this time, I realised how long it had been. I knew all the beats in my head.
Yeah.
I knew the beginning, the middle, and everything. But when I was watching it, I was like, I actually haven't seen this as an adult. I don't think I've seen it since I was like 10.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So long time then.
Long
Yeah.
time,
So I similar definitely seen it as a kid, far too young. I think I actually remember it was a bonfire night, and I was so young I was scared of fireworks. So I went inside thinking there would be something nice there. And what was on the TV? Jaws. And yeah, I just like remember watching that and being scared. So rewatched it again in my late teens as an adult because, you know, obviously I'd grown up and had an appreciation for film, wanted to rewatch it. So I hadn't probably seen it for many, many years and have now just rewatched it. And so glad I did. Like, even though the imagery and the iconic scenes and moments from that film are I think if anyone who likes film, those scenes are very much burnt into your mind. I think Jaws is one of those films that even though you and I were born in the 90s, we feel its everlasting effect on pulp culture, even in our timelines.
Totally. You know what? We should give a bit of context for everyone.
To Jaws, right?
Yeah.
So if you didn't know, Jaws is a film directed by Steven Spielberg, came out in 75.
Came out in 75. It was Spielberg's, essentially his first film. I mean, no, he'd made a film before called Duel, which was about a guy driving a car who gets in sort of like a weird battle with a guy who's driving a massive oil truck behind him. He's kind of pursued by this oil truck. And I think he'd made a TV movie as well, but for all intents and purposes, this was his first big break. He's making it for Universal Pictures, and it was a notoriously difficult shoot.
It was one of those things where Spielberg has since come out and talked about how he was quite naive and how, I didn't know this. It was the first film that was ever actually shot on the ocean. And he was like, no, I'm going to insist on shooting it on the ocean because nothing will ever look like that. Yeah. If for some reason you haven't seen Jaws, it takes place in this beautiful American seaside town that very much heavily relies on tourism in the summer. Kids and teenagers who go swimming start getting picked off by a mysterious, they start dying essentially. Of course, it's a shark. The characters, one of them is like the police chief Martin Brody, played by Roy Schneider.
Scheider,
sorry,
there's no
No, that's right. It's Schneider. Roy Scheider. And he starts realizing that kids are dying. He, through all sorts of realizes it's a shark. And they start having this huge crisis meeting. Obviously, the typical money-grubbing mayors are like, we can't shut down the resort. We have to make money. Yeah,
it's very specific to this community actually. So, the where it's set is it plays a fictional place called Amity Island, which is basically like Martha's Vineyard. It's on the east. Yeah, it's on the east coast, and it's near like Cape Cod and Hyannisport, and very quickly that it's a shark attack. But the conflict on the land is that because this is a summer town, it profits hugely. The businesses depend on the summer crowd coming, and if you have a shark attack, you want to close the beaches, but obviously the pressure from the town is we can't close the beaches because we need this money. Exactly. So then you have this pressure of this massive to a shark is a massive amount of food coming to the beaches. So anyway, so they have this big town meeting and stuff.
Big meeting. They need to basically find a way to get rid of this shark. It comes to the point where we're not going to close the beaches, so we have to basically hunt down the shark. Yeah. So they recruit the local marine biologist, played by Richard Dreyfuss, and a shark hunter, played by Robert Shaw. And through all sorts of events, they end up going in sort of the last half of this film on a boat to hunt this massive shark.
Yeah, and it is very much a film of two halves. So it
really is. I definitely realised that.
Yeah, I thought that it was the last third, but it really is split in two.
Yeah.
So the first half is very much establishing how this shark works and how it's one of the biggest sharks they've ever faced. It's building the mystery, and these other characters you have. So, Brody, the police chief, is very much a cool, calm, collected, trying to just hold everyone together.
Be reasonable,
be rational.
Do the right thing by the people in the town.
Hooper, who is Richard Dreyfuss's character, the marine biologist, is full of ideas, full of science, full of knowledge. Yeah. But he's also kind of a little bit inept at being in this world. He hasn't got the masculinity of Brody.
Bookie scientist.
He's bookie. He's rich as well. He's entitled. So he has all the equipment, but he doesn't have the physicality that living in a marine life exists. And then to contrast that, you have Quint, played by Robert Shaw, who is this shark hunter.
Squinty seafarer.
He's a couple of notches down from going, arr!
Yeah, you walk into his shop and he's got literal jaws of sharks he's hunted hanging on the walls, and it's made of wood, and there's hooks and fishing rods everywhere. He's a real sort of rusty shipman.
And it's a very famous entrance to this character because you have this very sort of like high-pitched town meeting where everyone's hysterical, and Brody's...
Classic, I think now, a trope. Walking into the meeting.
And Brody's trying to calm everyone down, and then you just hear these nails being scratched down the chalkboard, and everyone turns around, and it's Quint, and he says, something like,
I'll hunt that shark for you.
It looks like you got a 20-footer.
20-footer.
I'll hunt it for you.
Yeah.
It's going to be a big 10 grand for the thing. Anyway, and... fantastic.
He puts himself forward to be the man to kill the shark.
However, obviously the town aren't ready to do that yet. But anyway, after it gets to a point, as you said, where the shark attacks are so frequent and so big in some fantastic scenes that they agree to go out on Quint's boat, and it then in the second half of the film it shrinks down to being this boat literally on the ocean. It's Brody, it's Hooper, it's Quint. The hunt the shark.
Yeah, and like again, we sort of touched on it. Its relevance in pop culture, but I think it has defined and basically put to vision the primal fear of sharks, and I think escalated everyone's fear of the sea.
Oh, absolutely.
I've heard that from the release of that film, people were genuinely terrified to go swimming again. Like there were reviews saying, "I'll never go in the sea again." Yeah. Like it really did touch on like a primal fear that we all have of the unknown. What's that? I think it's thalassophobia, which is the fear of the dark ocean, or like what lies beneath.
Really? Oh,
so you know that feeling if you've ever been like far out to sea and you go swimming and you look down and you're feet are just dangling and it just fades into darkness.
Yeah.
That idea that there's something dark lurking below.
That can
all
just
sorts
come
of-
up and
There's something wonderful to like discuss in the play about what the sea and like the unknown represents, like the void of subconscious and death and like like blind nature just not caring about what's happening. So there is that. I mean, so obviously we know this film was basically at its time thought of to be the pinnacle summer blockbuster. This was like pushed and marketed in a way that had never really been done before.
I will just say on this. So if anyone wants some homework reading to go home after this, there's a really good book by a film critic called Tom Sean who wrote a film was called Blockbuster: How the Jaws and Jedi Generation Built Hollywood, basically.
Yes.
And it was like a riposte to this other very famous book about the film industry called Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, which Peter Biskin had written about, like the American New Wave. And that film, that book, which was really interesting about the boom in American independent cinema in the 70s, was great, but also it kind of made this like, it lamented about how the blockbuster had, taken over and trampled over all creativity and artistry. But what Tom Sean's book was saying is like, well, actually, there was a lot of innovation happening in the blockbuster, and it got, he traces the blockbuster from Jaws and Star Wars up to the point where Lord of the Rings is winning the Oscars in 2003. Really interesting book.
Jaws is a like B-movie concept,
but Jaws,
isn't it?
this was a real watershed moment for it did create the modern blockbuster. It was that idea of like, it's a summer release tied to a day of the year, and I think affected the way that people perceive the release calendar, and then Star Wars 2 years later completely changed the way films were released.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so it was the highest grossing film until the release of Star Wars in 1977.
Right.
So like straight away it made loads of money. Budget of this film was $4 million, but the picture wound up costing $9 million.
Yeah.
So that is like horrendously over budget. I mean, we'll get into what this play that we saw really goes on is the struggles they had actually shooting on the ocean for obvious reasons. When Spielberg was originally getting attached to shoot this film, he was 26. So that's younger than us. He was talking about directing a multi-million-dollar film on the Atlantic Ocean, and he's to this day he's talked about how naive and inexperienced he was, and he says, I could have shot the movie in a tank or even in a protected lake somewhere, but would have not looked the same. I was naive about the ocean. Basically, I was pretty naive about Mother Nature, and the hubris of a filmmaker who thinks he can conquer the elements was foolhardy. But I was too young to know I was being foolhardy when I demanded that we shoot the film in the Atlantic Ocean and not in a North Hollywood tank.
But I would say this is one of those examples where this film is like a perfect accident.
Yes.
Because for all of those reasons, this film should have failed. But yet, it created a weird catalyst where for all of those reasons, the film works. For example, the shark, that's why the play is called The Shark is Broken. Bruce, they called the shark, the mechanical shark, kept breaking down. And they explain in the play why, it's something to do with the literal science behind and the use of salt water. But that meant that for most of the film, you don't see the shark, and that is 100. That's perfect. You don't see the first time you see the shark fully, I think, is when they're on the boat.
On the boat,
and it's that shot of when
you see a dorsal fin early on. And that's it.
But when the mouth comes out, and then Roy Scheider reacts, and that's when he says
it's that shot where he's looking into camera. It's like famous shot.
Yeah, and he says, "Come chop on some of this shit," and it comes out, and then he says, "We're going to need a bigger boat."
Yeah.
But until then, it's just you only know about the threat of the shark from how it's perceived by the people it's affecting. So it'll be a tremor on land or someone's boat getting knocked, and that is perfect. I mean, that's how you build tension and suspense.
So you know how when we were talking about aliens and how what's great about those is that you don't show the monster until the very end, and like we talked about this film just now, like not revealing its monster. That is a byproduct of not out of choice. It was technical limitations that they literally couldn't show the shark. And Steven Spielberg, again, to quote him, he said, "The shark not working was a godsend. It made me become more like Alfred Hitchcock than Ray Harryhausen. The acting became crucial for making audiences believe in such a big shark. The more fake the shark looked in the water, the more my anxiety told me to heighten the naturalism of the performances." So actually, like, that whole element is designed by not being able to just digitally CG a shark under the water. Like, that's what gave birth to that suspense.
And also it's clever because really, look, an audience knows what a shark looks like.
Yes.
And the film is called Jaws, and the shark is on the poster.
The shark is on the famous poster.
In a way, of course you don't need to show the shark for the first bit. We all know what we're dealing with here. But it is true that is such a winning element. And the acting, well, I mean, the performances really do hide it. You have I think the first half of the film is like an exercise in such well executed, tight, direct filmmaking that Spielberg, like, we were watching this and you're like, yeah, I can tell that Spielberg is going to go on and have decades of illustrious filmmaking.
Yeah.
But in the second half, I think it's so resourceful and economical. That's what for a film that went over budget by more than 100% of its budget. It is so economical with how it uses its time with the audience. And like in that second half, just the three of them, these three very different types of masculinity on this boat. No one's really the clear lead,
which they go into.
And I mean, for me, there's a wonderful moment where, again, we haven't seen the shark yet, and on the boat, Hooper's driving the boat. And Brody is feeding the chum,
like guts.
into the sea,
chum, yeah.
And Quint is in the seat with the giant fishing rod that's like metallic and it's like bolted
so
up,
good.
and you just hear, because the line's starting to catch.
And he is a shot where his eyes are forward and he hears the click and his eyes go to the camera and just on the rod.
And he doesn't. He very slowly, and this is a wonderful way of building tension.
So
he
good.
clips himself into the chair,
clips the boat,
and
straps his feet into the boat.
So, like
it's
literally
fantastic.
bolts himself down, puts the fishing rod like into its own little bolt thing, and then he's like, "Okay, here we go."
Yeah.
And it all comes together.
Tarantino was talking about the tension of this movie, and he said it's like an ever stretching rubber band.
Oh, that's
just
an excellent description.
Yeah,
it really is. And then you have these moments of interiority where they're literally inside the boat at night, and they're, for want of a better word, they're having this dick measuring contest, which again is not really, Brody's not really involved, because again, Brody is the clear-eyed one who's just wanting to kill the shark. Brody's the one in this film who hates the ocean. I always forget that. Brody doesn't. That's why Brody doesn't drive the boat. He hates the ocean. He just wants to kill the shark, right? But Hooper obviously has dealt with sharks, and Quint's dealt with sharks, and they start having this dick measuring contest where they compare their scars, and it builds and builds and builds, and until Hooper says, "What about that one there on you?" And Quint says, "That's a tattoo, rubbed out tattoo." He says, "Of what?" He says, "It's the USS Indianapolis." And then there's this silence in the room, and Hooper says, "You're on the Indianapolis." And then what begins is essentially one of the greatest, most famous like film monologues in pop culture, up there with like the Tears and Rain in Blade Runner. And Robert Shaw delivers this fantastic monologue about why Quint hates sharks and his experience on the Indianapolis.
It's a weird, real like slow the film down movement, focusing,
really
camera
tight on his.
No, there's like one little lamp above them that's only lighting.
It's
them.
eerie,
and everyone, including the audience, so the actors really feel them like lean in to listen, and then everyone, you as well, you're like.
Again, economical. You don't need to do that with big thrills. You do it with somebody telling, because you've already built the tension of why Quint is like this.
Yeah.
And, he's such a master at those words. Delivering the bomb, the Hiroshima bomb, on the island of Tahiti. Yeah. 2 torpedoes. Sorry, it's just it's so tempting to go into the whole thing.
Now, like we'll get into that. We'll get into the play and what it focuses on in a moment. But like that scene or that speech, like you'll never see it again.
Yeah.
And obviously, like coming onto this play, which was all about the huge difficulties that this film had filming, and there were reports of long days where the crew would come out of days literally spent at sea, ravaged and sunblown. This is a quote, windblown and covered with salt water.
Yeah.
As we said before, this was the first film to ever actually shoot on the ocean. They had several delays with unwanted sailboats drifting into frame, cameras getting soaked. The actual orca began to sink with the actors on board. That's one of the things.
The orca's the boat.
We talked about the prop sharks that they use. So they frequently malfunctioned owing to a series of problems, including obviously bad weather, pneumatic hoses taking on salt water, camera frames fracturing due to water resistance, corroding skin. So they actually built the shark with this non-absorbent neoprene foam that made up the sharks, but actually it soaked up all the water, which caused the sharks to balloon in size, just making them unusable. The shark kept getting tangled in seaweed. Spielberg has later calculated that during the 12-hour daily work schedule, on average only 4 hours was spent actually filming.
Wow.
The screenwriter Gottlieb was nearly decapitated by the boat's propellers. Dreyfus was almost imprisoned in that steel cage and they couldn't get him out. Actors were frequently seasick. Shaw also fled to Canada wherever he could for tax problems, which they kind of got into the play. The actors were engaging in binge drinking and developed a grudge against Dreyfus, who was getting rave reviews for his performance in Duddy Kravitz, which again the place goes into. And then the editor, who rarely didn't have, it was edited by Werner Fields, rarely had material to actually work with during principal photography because they would shoot 5, this is Spielberg quote, 5 scenes in a good day, 3 on an average day, and none in a bad day.
Jesus.
So they would sometimes get up, set up, actors would be sitting around all day, and they just straight up wouldn't be able to shoot because there's a boat in the background, something's gone wrong.
This is why I find it so interesting. If this film hadn't worked, if Spielberg hadn't been as good as a filmmaker as he is, which he is, I mean, we forget there's a reason he's had a career as long as he has because he's a fantastic filmmaker, that would have been his last film.
So, amazing quote again. Although principal photography was scheduled to take 55 days, it did not wrap until October 6, 1974, after 159 days.
Jesus Christ.
And when Spielberg was reflecting on, I love getting all these quotes, they're brilliant. When he was reflecting on the shoot, he said, "I thought my career as a filmmaker was over. I'd heard rumors that I would never work again because of the final, because no one had ever taken a film 100 days over schedule."
Wow.
And you know, and this is a famous thing now, that so Spielberg wasn't actually present for the shooting of the final scene in which the shark explodes.
Yeah.
Because
Spoiler.
he thought, because he believed that the crew were going to throw him into the sea when that happened. And to this day, Spielberg is never around for the final day, the final shot of his films.
Really?
As a tradition. Yeah. So he didn't want to do it because I think the sentiment of the crew was that
So
bad.
they're going to mutiny.
And now, to this day, he does a film, he's not there for the final shot.
Look, spoiler. I mean, sorry for spoiling the film, but
Yeah,
it's been out for
it's
46.
Jaws.
It's been out for 46
they
years.
get the
Oh,
shot.
what do you think is going to happen at the end? I would just say, before we go on to about the play, is
Yeah.
that Peter Benchley, who I believe wrote the novel of the book. Sorry, wrote the novel
Yes,
Jaws,
1974 novel, which got turned over very quickly.
Which he, I think, years later came out and was like, he really felt very guilty because of the amount of like shark killing and shark murders and this vendetta that people, this fear of people that have against sharks. And he was like the environmental, ecological
we're talking about like
damage.
the influence on people's mindset.
This is a huge hate film against sharks.
It's often put in the same category of The Exorcist as having had such a profound sense of fear impacted on its audience. Visceral fear. And you know, I was talking about thalassophobia, like the fear of the ocean. That poster with the teeth and the jaws looking up, that is like thalassophobia epitomized in a picture.
I love that poster for its simplicity. It's actually it's a beautiful bit of like poster design.
Woman sleeping in the sun, and then the dark fade from the bottom up to the shark.
And also, you know, John Williams' iconic score. I mean, all these little things you realise you're dealing with. What could that I think was what stood out to me when I rewatched it, is that it could have been such a silly film. It could have been really silly, but it was dealt with such artistry. You know, there was clearly such artists at work. Spielberg, even though he was out of his depth, was an artist.
Yes.
The script is great. The performances are great. John Williams is great. All of these things just happen to come together.
When John Williams presented Spielberg with the score, he thought it was a joke in the beginning.
Really?
And then he was like, "Oh no, this is great." Obviously, yeah.
But I think that can sometimes happen when you're under pressure on a film. It forces you to perform your very best because you're up against it, and the results show.
Just one last thing before we go into the play and what it's about. Obviously, we talked about how Spielberg thought his career was over. It had been so over budget. But Jaws opened to 409 theaters with a record $7 million weekend and grossed $21 million in its first 10 days. So completely recouped its production costs. It grossed $100 million in its first 59 days. This is in the 70s. Like, that is insane. Yeah. And then in just 78 days, it overtook The Godfather as the highest grossing film in the North American box office. So incredibly successful. Won 3 Academy Awards, Best Film Editing, Best Dramatic Score, Best Sound, and then nominated for Best Picture, but losing to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest that year.
Fair enough.
So there you go. So obviously went on to be huge success. Multiple sequels, which are nowhere near as good. Yeah. But that is, I think, in a nutshell, Jaws.
Okay, so that brings us to The Shark is Broken. And let's explain this and why I wanted to watch it. So, for context, this play is written by Robert Shaw's son, Ian Shaw, right? And it is about those 3 actors. They're the only 3 actors in the play on the Orca, which is the boat in Jaws, sitting around shooting the shit between takes.
The long breaks between takes.
And in this play, the way it presents the characters is you have Robert Shaw, who's an English actor, a very prestigious, classically trained a thespian is the right to say, of that era, which hard drinking, very passionate, tough thespian actor. Meanwhile, you have Roy Scheider, who again is a little bit of a middleman in this, and then you have Richard Dreyfuss, who is this energetic, plucky, young upstart, who's very much of the new Hollywood era.
Nervous energy,
but also incredibly anxious and incredibly neurotic. And the film really is a dichotomy between those two, with Brody in the middle. And And so that's an interesting context. So we immediately thought, well, we have to go see this. There is, I think I should say at this point that before we get talking to the play and what we thought about it, we had the only slight disappointment when we saw it is that Ian Shaw, who is Robert Shaw's son, plays Robert Shaw in this play.
Yeah.
And he looks a lot like Robert Shaw. And one of the big draws for me for seeing this play was like, I can't wait to see an actor play his father in this tribute to him in this play. Sadly, when we saw it, Ian Shaw was away. So we had the understudy, who was great. Don't get me wrong. Nothing wrong with an understudy. I respect it. But it did mean that extra meta-textuality to that play had kind of been lost. And it did take me 10 minutes to sort of accept that had gone. Because I don't think you would know this, but I only know this from doing, reading around the play beforehand. But Robert Shaw died 2 years after filming Jaws.
No, it didn't.
He died, I think he was 49 or maybe just 50.
Wow.
And that's why the film is quite poignant, because it's written by his son. And in it, Robert Shaw is talking about how Robert Shaw's father died when he was very young. Right. And Robert Shaw talks about, the character of Robert Shaw in this play talks about, I wonder if I'll outlive him. I wonder if I'll get to that point. So Ian Shaw, I think, was only about 8. And Ian Shaw now is the same age that Robert Shaw was when he died.
Wow.
So there's all these poignancy that sadly we didn't get to see because he wasn't involved. But that's just the context. So
it's set. You literally have the staging was the cross section of the orchid, like sliced in half.
Yeah.
You could see one half, and then it's open to the audience. There's this sort of water effect, lighting, smoke on the side, and they got this wonderful curved panoramic screen behind them, which is the horizon of just the water. And every so often there's a little sailboat that goes by and they have to cut, but it's just the water, and that's it in terms of staging. The rest is a real lock-in.
And then all you hear is the occasional voice of a very good Steven Spielberg impression.
Yeah.
Could you actually come down for that?
Yeah.
And
you never see him, but he's just a voice.
He's just a voice. And you have, Robert Shaw's at a really interesting point. The character is as dramatically is at an interesting point in this, because he is realizing, they were all realizing that Hollywood's changing.
Yes.
And this perhaps is a new kind of film. And
sorry, go on.
no, but there's is Robert Shaw's kind of thinking, what kind of film am I in here? And Richard Dreyfuss is conversely thinking, this is not the kind of film I thought I'd be in as an actor. Like, is this really going to make our names? And I will actually say at this point that I think that you have to accept that the presentation of these characters are not direct impressions of the actors. I think they are very much interpretations, and I actually think the play almost kind of misunderstands Roy Scheider a little bit. I mean, yes, they put him as this middleman, but the way he's presented and the way he was performing in the play, I felt like, look, I don't know Roy Scheider, but I've seen other films with him in, and I've seen interviews with him, and I thought he was a much more cool, slightly probably cooler, masculine kind of guy than in this. He was almost a little bit like of a dork. They played him quite dorky, reading his newspaper and, actually, I think this. But actually, Roy Scheider was much more like this. He was much cooler. So that had kind of been lost. And Richard Dreyfuss is like all energy and all mania. However, that's the context of the play. I think we both had a kind of good time, didn't we?
Yeah, I think what I found really interesting overall about that film is that, as you said, it's 3 actors trying to understand about Hollywood and the industry in the world and how it's changing. And they're also trying to understand what this film is. And there's this whole idea, because I think a lot of people have, which what we're doing literally right now, which is over-intellectualizing a great film that maybe is just about a shark.
Yeah.
And there's this whole debate where, like, no, it's about the subconscious primal fear and the unknown and humanity's quest to overcome. And then there's one point where he just goes, no, it's about a damn shark. It's about a shark. It's a summer blockbuster. And, I think all those answers are right. But what I find really interesting, I think any time art, or maybe if you see an old interview, when you try and see people understand where they're at in pop culture the moment they're in it. And I think of all the times we try and intellectualize our own time period, and it's one of those impossible things to do when you're living in a time period. You can't quite see the forest for the trees. And I think as you get older, you look back. I think now I'm in my 20s, like older. But I can now look back to when I was 10 and be like, that was a period in time. And I can now see that for what it is. But at the time, I didn't really know. So them talking about what the film is going to do and how well it's going to go and the nature of cinema and how everything's going to be sequelized. I loved seeing little nuggets of how they were right, but also how they were wrong. And I think that's always really interesting to see people try and understand and intellectualize where they're at in time. That I find really interesting. Because we're always doing that.
There's quite a lot of wink, wink, knowing jokes to the audience about, like, At one point Roy Scheider says, well, if there's a sequel to this film, I'll never be in it.
Biggest laugh, I think.
Yeah, ha ha. And, they talk about Richard Nixon. And
there are
they
like
say,
four sequels to Jaws or something? Three sequels?
It's four. Yeah, four. Yeah, and, there's a bit where they talk about Richard Nixon and Roy Scheider says, there'll never be a more corrupt president than there is now.
Yeah.
And lots of stuff. It's like, ha ha. And I actually thought the play was a lot more fun and funny than I expected. I actually expected it to be uglier. I thought it was going to be, when I heard about this feud that they had with the actors on set, I thought it was going to be like, oh, this is quite uncomfortable. Because in reading about the play, Ian Shaw said that, he'd actually met Richard Dreyfuss later on in life and said, I work with Robert Shaw. And Richard Dreyfuss almost had like a visceral response and was like, oh God, yeah, off stage, off camera, when we weren't shooting, your dad was like an incredible person. It was amazing, very kind, very sweet. But when we were on set, he was a real tyrant. He was,
really,
and like he really struggled with it. And I think he's talked about that in the documentary as well. So I thought I was going to see a real lot of ugliness, but instead it's a bit more fun and compassionate, really, which is fine. I'm not a problem with that.
And it's quite nice and short for a play. It's an hour and a half, no interval, just all the way through, keeps you locked in. And I was like, that was a good amount of time to keep me locked in that room. Yeah. And it's not one scene. Like it does take place over a few days, and it sort of fades into black a couple of times.
Yeah, and it breaks into these actually just like scenes that are just tableaus. It just shows them
sitting,
not speaking, of just to capture how long they've been on this boat. So, for example, you'll fade up and Dreyfuss will be playing cards inside. Scheider will be on sitting on the deck, and Shaw will be on the boat trying to balance against the waves.
Yeah, there's a lot of dealt a lot with addiction and alcohol and
panic attacks.
Lots of panic attacks, and he already revealed he was I can't remember his name. Revealed he was taking cocaine throughout some of the shoots.
Dreyfuss. Yeah,
which I thought was really interesting. Again, like nervy, angsty actor. But yeah, like I came out of that thinking, God, I'd love to see that same approach or template applied to loads of other films, because I bet there are so many incredible stories of people who didn't get on, amazing things that happened between when the cameras were rolling. It's just a great lock-in.
And just to circle back, what a horrible phrase, I'm so corporate. Just to go back
we synergize our portfolios.
When we're talking about that very famous monologue, the play the play understands that importance of that scene within pop culture and within people's perception of that film. So what they kind of break it down, they approach that monologue 3 times, and I think it's okay to talk about it.
Well, it was sort of being rewritten.
Yeah, that's it. So the first time the monologue is mentioned, Robert Shaw's, again, the character of Robert Shaw is
trying to get it out.
It's sort of saying, this is so poorly written, this is rubbish, but let me have a crack at it. Because there's all this stuff in how Robert Shaw really wanted to be a writer, really wanted to be a novelist, not an actor. And he just found it as a distraction. So he says, let me have a crack at it. And then there's a second time where he has a go at it, but he is under the influence. He's just drunk, isn't he? And he's really struggling against it. It's very sad. And then I don't think this is a spoiler to say, but the play concludes, and then it then ends properly with this epilogue where
you see it in the film.
Quint delivers the monologue as it is in the film. And in the context of a theatre, it is great because everyone knows that and everyone loves hearing it. And then what they did is their lovely little touch is they had a shooting star come across the background, which is, of course, is famous because in Jaws they capture a shooting star by accident, isn't it? They're just shooting it out in the ocean in the middle of the night, and a shooting star goes by Roy Scheider's head. So, really wonderful play. I'm glad we saw the film beforehand to heighten our perception of the play.
So glad I'd seen it before.
And also now the play informs my perception of the film.
Yeah, really strongly recommend. It's playing at the Ambassadors Theatre until
I think it's to the end of January. I think they might have even extended their run, but definitely go see it. And again, just so we're clear for the record, not a problem with the understudy. Absolute props to the guy. He was very good, very, very good. The whole cast was very good.
And I'll never. I knew that was a great speech, but I'll never hear that speech the same way again.
No.
Now I've heard it dissected in that way and what went into it. And I don't think I'll ever see that film in the same way. Like, as soon as they go onto the boat, I'll be thinking about those relationships and how sort of fractured they were.
And of course, if you haven't seen Jaws, that's 46 years old. What have you been doing?
Jaws, I know, like, it still has that B-movie blockbuster like pulpiness to it, but it does really hold up as a fantastic, like just watch at home.
It's like we've talked about before. We keep talking about this every week, but Aliens, right?
Yeah.
Which sounds like the most generic B-movie stuff, but it's actually so well executed. Jaws is the same thing. Jaws is a really, really good film.
Okay, George, so it is December. We're coming to the end of 2021. I'd say, it's been a bit of a recovery year in terms of films and the cinema. We've had to there's a lot of delayed films that have come out. It has definitely come to the end of the year. But I thought while we're coming to the end, let's have a quick look at 2022. Okay. A lot of delayed films, and I just thought I'd throw some at you, and we could just say yes, no, hate it, can't wait. Okay. Trailer looks terrible, trailer looks great. Okay. Look, we live in a comic book era, so there just are a lot of comic book films.
Sure. And I'm a comic book girl. Yeah.
So kind of a weird one to start, because I don't know what you think about these films, but in January, we've got Scream 2022.
Right, look. I don't know why they keep making Scream films.
Here we go.
I'm very confused. Look,
with David Arquette and Courtney Cox are apparently returning.
So that's technically Scream 5 , okay?
Are you sure? Yeah, not more.
No. So there's Scream 1, which I've...
Scream.
It's the only, it's the only Scream I've seen, and it is a really good film. Again, like we were talking about with Jaws.
Love Scream.
Looks really generic, but it's actually really...
Sleepover classic.
It's very funny. It's very funny, and it's very subversive.
Doesn't take itself too seriously.
Doesn't take itself because it's very subversive about the horror genre, and it's poking a lot of fun whilst also delivering the chills of a horror film.
And still, on Halloween today, I see kids in Scream masks still.
But like when people talk about Scream, they're like, "Oh, that's just like a straightforward horror film." I'm like, "Well, no. I mean, that opening scene with Drew Barrymore on the phone, iconic.
What's your favorite scary
but it's
movie?
Also very funny and subversive. So I like Scream. Didn't see Scream 2. Haven't seen Scream 3.
I think I've
seen Scream 4 came out in 2010. I think.
Yes,
like
I've seen that.
Like years later. Then they made 2 seasons of it on Netflix. Do you remember?
God, I forgot about that.
And now it's coming back. I'm just like, let it die.
You know when it's going on for a long time, when they stop numbering it and they just call it Scream brackets year of release.
Right,
like with the Halloweens, they just got to go. It's not 6 because you don't want to need to have seen the 5.
Yeah.
But it's
so I'm not interested. Won't see it, and I find it quite depressing.
Another January release coming out, Morbius, which we've mentioned before.
We're talking about Jared Leto today. So this is a superhero.
This is the
Sonyverse of Marvel's characters, with
kind of tied in, but kind of not.
Yeah, where he plays a vampire essentially.
It's basically Batman without being Batman. It's bitten by a bat. I think I've not seen it, but it looks like that.
It looks like the most generic 2003 superhero film.
It's got the same color palette as Van Helsing.
Yes, we have talked about this before.
But it really does look like a film I could not be interested in.
And I've said this before. There's a reason that it's out in January. That's a dumping ground. That's just like let it out. Next, the trailer for that film came out in like January 2020. So it's been sat around for a while.
I was like, oh, fuck is Morbius?
Yeah, exactly.
But here we are. We're getting it. In February, again, don't know how you feel about this, but Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg are starring in the Uncharted movie.
Right, based on the popular PlayStation series.
Based on my incredibly beloved Uncharted series, which is very sacred to me. Before I go into it, do you have any stake in this?
I played Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception. I very much enjoyed it. For context, these games are very much informed by like the Indiana Jones kind of treasure hunting across, and the game format was very different.
So Uncharted is from Tomb Raider what Tomb Raider is from Indiana Jones.
Right.
That's like the DNA track for you.
I enjoyed it. I know they've been talking about making a film for like ever.
A long time.
So hang on, who's playing Drake then?
So this is what's really annoying, is that Nathan Drake, these are fantastic video games, which I think made by the studio called Naughty Dog, who also made The Last of Us, which is getting its own HBO show, which we'll talk about in a few months whenever that comes out. But basically, these games have pretty much are the summer blockbuster films of games, and they really do. At the time they released, they represented the pinnacle of cinematic storytelling in
it was
video
very
games.
cinematic.
Incredible. Uncharted 1 now looks slightly dated, but from 2, 3, and 4, they are. As I think the drama in those games, especially 4, is as good as any film in terms of like the way that the characters look, the writing. It really is like super, super fun. Nathan Drake is a character in his, I would say, from his 30s to his mid 40s in those games. He's like a grown adult. And in those games, there are segments where he's a teenager. You go back and learn about his life. And then he's got this older character who's with him. He's like a cigar-wielding Sully. So for a long time, this film has been in development, pre-production hell for years. Ever since, I think, the second game came out, they were trying to develop a film for it. And originally, Mark Wahlberg was attached to play Nathan Drake, which kind of makes a lot of sense. Like, I get it for the age and the kind of actor. It really made sense. And that film, for whatever reasons, over the years, has just gained directors, lost directors, it's been a mess. And this new version came up, and the first announcement was that Mark Wahlberg was attached to play Sully, who is in his late 60s, 70s, with a mustache, and he talks like this, Nate, we gotta get the treasure.
Much more of a William Hurt kind of, Thunderbolt Ross kind of guy.
Yeah, like old sort of like, and he's a real role model for Drake. And it made no sense to have Mark Wahlberg cast as that character, and then you had Tom Holland cast as Nathan Drake.
Right.
And I like Tom Holland, I have no problem with it, but in the lead up to this trailer coming out, Tom Holland has come out in a couple of interviews and said, basically in so many words, he doesn't think he did a very good job with this film. He talked a lot. I think his rough quote was, "I learned a lot doing Uncharted. I did a lot of posing and trying to look good for the camera, which I realize now is a huge mistake. I need to focus on the performance, and I'm not sure." He basically, without saying it, said he didn't do a very good job. The video game movie is like very cursed. It has a huge they've not been able to make good.
There's never been a good video game movie.
We won't go into probably for another section, but they've never done it. Anyway, I saw this trailer and I thought, I really hope they don't taint this, because they've taken so many scenes from like all of the games and trying to like put it into this younger version of Nathan Drake. And I'm kind of just like, oh, please be good, but I don't want it to ruin. Uncharted's sacred to me. It really is. I have special memories of it.
I hope they put it off, but
I'm going to see it, but I don't
hold up high hope. I don't have that much skin in the game either.
Coming into March, The Batman. We had already talked about it.
Ooh, yes.
I'm super excited.
Yes, I'm excited to see that.
Really
I feel a little bit nervous that it looks a little bit messy, but I will see it. I'm interested in that. I do feel like it's got a bit more ideas behind it than just simply rebooting the character. The guy who directed it,
trendy.
Matt Reeves, did the Planet of the Apes films, the new ones, which I quite enjoyed. See what we got.
Lovely. Into May, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Look, I'm a sucker for superhero films when they're all like crazy and psychedelic and things falling out skies and stuff.
I want to see more, like the tessellation building, trippy effects, falling. I'm interested to see where from Spider-Man, which we're going to see soon, where Doctor Strange is and all that mess into it.
Let's lean on the Strange a little bit. I mean, they've been building up the multiverse for a long time. I'm just like, let's go for it.
Let's go for it.
I'm ready.
And it's Multiverse of Madness, you're in. Straight into May.
One more thing.
Yes.
Actually, sorry, on the Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange thing, I think it's going to be like that episode of The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror where Homer keeps falling through different parallel universes.
I don't know.
He like gets a time machine. It's like a toaster. It takes him back to the like dinosaur age.
Oh,
and like first of all, he tries not to touch anything, and then he sits on a bug, and it just changes everything. Then he goes back again. Then he like it's very good.
I need to watch that. That sounds great. Yeah. Coming into May, this is funny because we haven't seen the original Top Gun Maverick.
We haven't seen the original, but I've seen the trailer and it looks very good. It's got that classic Tom Cruise brand thing now, which is that it's very physical, very tactile, very like. If we're going to fly a jet, we're going to have a camera strapped to the jet, and it's going to be doing what loops and stuff.
No, actually, like strap an IMAX camera to a plane.
That tactility I kind of appreciate, and I am interested in watching where the Tom Cruise brand continues to grow. And just like I'm just curious. I think
he's still great, Tom Cruise.
I think also the way that those films are directed now can be really thrilling. I will see the original before I see.
Yeah, we should do a watch. I think. Next up in June, we've got Jurassic World Dominion, but the reason I bring it up is that it's bringing back Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum.
That is the death throes of a franchise, desperately clasping at any attempt to do anything. I don't care. I saw Jurassic Park, great.
Love Jurassic Park.
I haven't seen Jurassic Park: The Lost World. I don't think it looks that good. Jurassic Park 3, I saw it at the cinema, but it's pretty. That's the one with the talking velociraptor. Alan. Jurassic World, I saw and I thought it was fine. It has that silly bit where she runs in the high heels away from the T-Rex. But I love Jurassic World only for one reason. It's not even, I don't love the film. It's because when I went to see it, I saw it and there was like an 8-year-old behind me. And when the film finished, the 8-year-old turned to his mum and said, "That's the best film I've ever seen." I was like, worth it.
That's what like a Spielberg film is for. Really.
Exactly. Not that it was Spielbergian film. I didn't see whatever was Paradise Lost. What was it called?
Fallen Kingdom.
And I heard it
so bad.
Yeah, I heard it really. I was possibly going to see that, but I got put off by the trailer. It's about someone the trailer actively puts you off because me and my friend were watching it, and then the trailer shows that they come off the island and go back to Earth, and there's like an auction, and there's like dinosaurs in a house, and we were like, whoa, what the fuck is this? We thought we were staying on the island.
It was set at the last loads of it was in a house, and then like the whole plot point of we're going to weaponize the velociraptors was always really boring to me as a plot point. Yeah, World was like not great but passable fun in the cinema. You could watch it and be like, dinosaurs thing. And then that was really bad. I totally agree. Bringing those three back, while tempting and is probably going to get a cinema ticket, is clutching at the last thing. Like, because remember, World was a $1 billion film.
I would rather see those three actors in a proper film.
Yeah.
Like a drama. I love Sam Neill. I love Sam Neill. He's such a good actor. And Laura Dern is always great. And Goldblum, he is eccentric. He is aloof. He's actually bizarre.
He's weirder now than he
He's
is.
so weird, but
He was in Fallen Kingdom for a scene.
yeah, and they really overemphasize how much he was in that film.
Well, we must.
Life finds
A
a way. I would rather he made a film
Park
with these guys.
one, I adore. I think the first act of Park is one
Let's
of the
go
best
faster.
first
Let's go
acts.
faster.
It's one of the best first acts, in, structurally in terms of writing that I think I can think of. It's so clean, and when the first act ends with that scene, it was like, how did you do this? And then what's face looks back, it's like, I'll show you. Boom, into act 2. It's like so perfect.
I want to see
it deserves an
a
essay.
Shark is Broken version of Jurassic Park,
Yeah,
where it's
that'd be really cool.
Sam Neill, Jeff Goldblum, and Laura Dern on like
hanging
the
out in the
soundstage.
truck, like, yeah.
They got us back for the sequel. Weird thing.
And like the kitchen scene, like iconic, like suspense.
Iconic,
Anyway,
iconic,
no, for another day. Coming into July, Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah, you know,
Taika Waititi back, I think.
Yeah, so Marvel film. Yeah,
I feel like it's very much a sequel to Ragnarok.
Yeah,
weirdly,
look,
like the first two Thor films are kind of their own thing.
Here's the thing about Taika Waititi, because I think you and I both will happily watch that film. We really much enjoyed it. But here's the thing about Taika Waititi.
And Ragnarok was great.
I like Taika Waititi. He makes some interesting films, but I'm worried that he will be unadulterated, unfiltered Taika Waititi, and that's when I struggle with him. In a way, Taika Waititi, I feel, has actually regressed as a filmmaker instead of progressing. He made this film in 2010 called Boy, which is amazing.
Not
It's
seen it,
such
but I've
a
heard it.
wonderful film,
to
which
see
is
that.
set in New Zealand, and it's about like this boy and his family, and they have no mother, and then his dad, who's played by Taika Waititi, comes out of prison, and what he achieves in his films is a child's eyes perspective and an adult level's perspective, and playing off the audience's perception of both. So you have the fun of the child's eyes, the child's eyes perception of the world, and then you have the sadness of the. So he thinks his dad's come back to like visit him, but actually, as an audience, you realise that the dad has actually come back for a different reason. And the way that Taika Waititi like draws on the childhood animation and the wonder of a child's imagination is
Did it
really
in Jojo Rabbit as well.
well. That's the thing. So he does it in Boy, beautiful film. He does it again in Hunt for the Wilder People, really nice, and he does it again in Jojo Rabbit. But what I find increasingly with those three films, as an example, is that he becomes more and more confident to just let himself go. And what Taika Waititi does is he doesn't know when not to make a joke. So there were times in Jojo Rabbit, which I got...
Do you think because of the subject matter it became difficult?
I don't know. I think he just always sees an opportunity. And I think the skill is as much saying, no, this is when you don't do a joke.
Right,
But
I see.
Jojo Rabbit I found really strange because I enjoyed it and a lot of other people... But then there was this whole other separate conversation where people sort of really hated it. But that aside, like there's bits in that, in the third act, where I'm like, okay, we are in Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
This is a tragic thing. And there's a scene where like the young Jojo wanders through this battlefield completely bewildered and lost, and there's people being shot and stuff around him. And for me, that's like a really important scene where you cut the jokes now.
Right, yeah.
You cut the jokes and you really hit for the heart. But they don't. He references a joke about Germans that happens before. You have Rebel Wilson coming in, like blowing up kids, and I'm just like, just Taika, just shut up for a minute and let the emotion of the scene breathe. So I'm just, with context of Thor: Love and Thunder, I'm like, I think I'll enjoy that, but I'm worried it's going to be Taika Waititi
This will be
overdrive.
even more.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because I think he saved Thor, and I think he's given a lot of comedic influence to the MCU, which I think has been good.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to give it a go. Into July, I know you're not a huge Potterhead, but Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. I assume you're not interested.
Well, no, not that I'm not interested. I
Fantastic
have
Beasts
perfectly
3.
respect for the Potter franchise.
Yep.
Okay, I've only seen up to film 4 and I've only read
You're
up
a
to
fucking
book
arsehole.
4. Thank you, James. But I've not heard good things about Fantastic Beasts, and particularly the second Fantastic Beasts I heard was really, really bad.
One, I was like, I give you permission to continue. I watched it. I was like, okay, American
Plain
stuff
movie.
is interesting. Real plain movie. 2 was so bad. Like I remember, I was the one a film where it ended, and I was like, oh, it's over. That's
bad,
you know, it's something to be said about films which you don't realize the pacing's so bad you don't realize it's over.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you're like, oh, that's it. This one, so Johnny Depp has been recast by Mads Mikkelsen, which I think will be pretty good.
Yeah, fine.
But yeah,
Good
just
guy.
the second film was such a slog. The first film had some really interesting themes in it. I was like, that's really clever. It's very Potter, and I get it.
Yeah.
The 2 was just a huge mess. There's this thing where it's like, it's called Fantastic Beasts, so we must get lots of like big beasts and we must always chase animals in this film. And I wish it didn't feel the need to create a big spectacle and have so many scenes where I'm chasing down animals and try and get them back in the box.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I wish it hadn't been
It's
called
not
Fantastic
Pokemon.
Beasts. Yeah, because the main guy played by Eddie Redmayne, Newt Scamander, his whole thing is that he's a magical beasts scholar.
Yeah.
Right? And he's a great character, but I don't need every film to be about, oh, look at all these wonderful animals running around.
Do you know
Just
what?
focus on the cool shit.
I'm always interested in how we perceive films without seeing them. And I could tell from looking at the poster and the way that the second film was marketed that it looked clueless, because it was clear that we're keeping Eddie Redmayne and the characters from the first film.
He's not relevant.
But he's not really the main character anymore.
No,
but they didn't know how to replace
it.
it. And they were like, because we've got Jude Law in as Dumbledore and they don't know how to balance
And
it.
the title of this annoys me, calling it The Secrets of Dumbledore, because I'm like, you're trying to fucking get me
Yeah.
to see this
Yeah.
film. Like,
Yeah.
I want to know The Secrets
Yeah.
of Dumbledore, but I really don't believe that they're going to be cool things.
That and the Jurassic World one in the bin. Get out.
But
in detention.
I am still so curious to learn more about the whole conflict between Dumbledore and Grindelwald.
Go and see it and tell us all about it.
Yes, I will. This one, still in July, Nope, which is Jordan Peele's new film, rumoured to be starring Daniel Kaluuya.
I'll see it, whatever.
Really
I'll
happy to
happily
see
see it. I loved Get Out. I really liked Us. I know Us
Yeah,
had
I
a little
liked
bit of a
Us
flaw,
as
but
well,
I think Us is so fun and so effective. So
I'd love to do a rewatch of both of those. I think that would be a really fun one to do.
Yeah.
September, we've got Mission Impossible 7. We already mentioned Tom Cruise, and we actually talked
happy
about
to
Mission
watch
Impossible.
that. Absolutely. Again, like I said with the Top Gun Maverick thing, those films are like really well executed now, and they know what they're doing, and I think they usually deliver. So yeah.
Into October, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Less interested because as much as I love Paul Rudd and as much as I love the psychedelic effects of watching Ant-Man shrink down to like subatomic, I am not interested. I found Ant-Man and the Wasp a bit boring.
Really boring.
And, I guess I'll just see it at the time.
Going into October, still in October, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2. Did you see Into the Spider-Verse 1?
Loved, adored
it.
that film.
How good.
That
Everyone
film-
go
yeah.
and see Into the Spider-Verse. Holy
Please,
shit.
That film won a bloody Oscar for a reason, okay?
it's
That is
so
such
good.
a well-crafted, fun, enjoyable... Because that's Lord and Miller, isn't it? Did they direct it or they produced it at least?
I'd have to check.
It's so fun and vibrant. And,
I've never seen anything like it.
I
Visually.
I really... And it's just so far removed from what you think of superhero films.
I remember seeing the trailer and being like, Pig Spider-Man, all these things. I'm not sure I'm
hilarious
in.
though. If you want to see Nicolas Cage voice a version of Spider-Man,
Yeah.
and John Mulaney voice of Cartoon Pig, then bloody go and see this film.
Really, really good. In November, The Flash.
Not interested. Tell you why I'm not interested in that. Not only have I zero interest in the DC world, and I've seen clips.
Ezra Miller from
I've seen
Justice
clips
League,
of Ezra Miller playing the Flash. He looks really annoying, but it's directed by Andy Muschietti, and Andy Muschietti did It and It Chapter 2.
Oh my God, It Chapter... I liked It 1.
Yeah, I liked It 1. I thought it was fine. Stand By Me with a clown, fine. I liked it. It was very charming. It Chapter 2 took the fucking piss.
It was 3 hours long.
It was 2 hours and 50 minutes.
I saw that with my cousin, and I was literally going in. He said, it's 3 hours long. I was like, no, it's 3 hours long. I was like, shut up.
Yeah.
This film's 3 hours long. Is it Return of the King?
Yeah.
What the fuck
It
are they doing in this film?
No
that's 3 hours long?
justification to do that. It had no right to do that. It completely misjudged the amount of love we had
There were
for
so
that
many
kind of characters.
sequences, so many fear. Anyway,
Dire. So I will not see that film.
we're nearly done. Into November, I know another comic film, but Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
I guess I'll see it. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually, look, I thought Black Panther was fine, but I respect its position, and I respect the fact
really
that it connected with so many people. So
Thought it was a fine movie, but I thought it was really cool to see black
be
people
interested-
represented in that film in a way that never done before.
I would be interested to see what they do, obviously, without
and
Chadwick
really
Boseman.
started it. No Chadwick Boseman. And then the final one in December, which will be a big film, Avatar 2 is coming, meant to be coming in December next year.
I feel like
we are getting that sequel
Avatar
this
2,
many years later.
Avatar 2 is the bus that never arrives. It is the
You're gonna
thing.
get
They're
four.
just like, you just never arrives. Look,
So just before you go, they have shot 4 films. So Avatars 2, 3, 4, and 5 together.
I'm going to say a bold claim. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. Look, I've seen
it's 2,
Avatar
3, and 4.
once at home. I know people say,
Right.
it is strange because people said to me, well, you're a big fan of cinema. Why didn't you go see Avatar at the time? It never appeals to me. I also looked a bit silly. Look, and I did see it and I thought it was fine.
Yeah,
and
it's a solid, good
it was
film.
solid.
Yeah.
Solid. But it's a bit silly at
Yeah.
times. But like, okay, it was better than I thought it would be, but it's still not amazing. And it was the massive hype. And now it's December 2022 will be 13 years after the original. That's
07?
no, it came out in 09.
09.
13 from 2022,
Yeah, sorry,
James. Is,
yeah. What year is it?
So
It's just worth mentioning because that film, regardless of what we think,
It's still the biggest film of all time.
Endgame was more than
it took it back. I think did
they re-release?
Avatar
Fine.
re-released in China, I think.
Oh,
Obviously,
fine. Okay, so it's in so many ways the highest grossing film that's ever come out. Like you can't you can't not acknowledge that for what it is, regardless of what we think. We are going to get, for looking in the next 5 years, we're going to get one of these every year or every 2 years. Like, we will be inundated with these.
Yeah.
I hope they're good. Like, I don't want to, if we're going to get loads of them and everyone's going to be seeing them, I really hope it's worth seeing.
And maybe he has spent the past decade, because that was the last. I don't think James Cameron's made a film since, right? He was. I think he's been working on that all this time.
I think you're right.
I mean, he might have made a couple of nature documentaries about deep sea diving. Didn't he do something in a
Yeah.
module? But like, if he spent all this time thinking and writing about it, then sure.
If you think back to 2009, the effect that Avatar had was every bloody film was in 3D. And you couldn't go see a film unless it was like a comedy without it being in 3D. And since that film has come out, we have come full circle and completely rejected 3D. You cannot now. I'm pretty sure you can't see a film.
If you were growing up as a film fan in the last decade, you would have known, like,
getting glasses.
but also you were very aware of Mark Kermode, but passionately being against 3D and giving the reasons why, 30% light loss, all these reasons.
It really was light loss.
And it was rubbish. It was rubbish. And he was right. And yes, it's fallen apart because consumers were just like, why am I paying more for this shit?
Yeah, there were a small handful of films which I think did good 3D. I think Gravity was one of them where I was like, that really enhanced the film. But other than that, a lot of films didn't shoot in 3D, but added 3D in post for the extra £1.50 it added to the cinematic. I remember Man of Steel.
So cynical.
Man of Steel did that, and it was just bad. It wasn't proper 3D. It was just like a little bit of like depth, and sometimes it results in blurriness. But I'm interested to see if he's going to really go for it or lean on the current trend, which is to shoot large format or IMAX and do that. So if all people to change it up, it will be him. So I'm interested to see what he's going to do.
I wish that directors would like switch positions. So like, let's get Christopher Nolan to do Avatar.
Yeah.
Let's get James Cameron to do, I don't know, the Oppenheimer film. Or like, James Cameron to do Tenet again or something.
Yeah. But whether we like it or not, those films are coming, and assuming it doesn't get delayed,
There's also,
this time next year we'll be seeing.
You know, let us know what you're excited about. Let us know.
It's a little sneak peek
what you want to
next
see.
year.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's many more surprises.
Those were mostly big budget blockbusters.
Do you know what, of all the
superheroes.
ones
there are going to be so many more great ones.
Of all the ones you said off the top of my head, the one I'm most excited about is Jordan Peele's one. No.
Yes, yeah, me too.